If you like this video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. For just $1 a month, your name can appear at the beginning of this and many other upcoming videos.
Ugh, please. These ponies are the heroes of Equestria?
Listen, these ponies saved all of us from the Storm King.
How? By boring him into surrender?
Oh, you don't know the half of it, kid. So because Hasbro thinks that giving us too much of a good thing at one time is a good thing, we finally have My Little Pony Season 8. Yeah, it feels really weird that we're getting more and more the series with less of a break in between. The longer wait made the return of the show feel more special, but ever since Season 6, they've just kind of been getting them out there faster. And we ended up getting a lot of stuff in the middle this time, with the movie and the Equestria Girls series. There has to be a point where they realize that oversaturation isn't exactly the best thing for your show. However, that really shouldn't affect the episodes themselves as long as they don't feel rushed. And School Daze, which focuses on Twilight and the main group opening a school to teach friendship lessons, seems like an interesting premise. It'll take a couple of episodes to fully determine how well this idea plays out, but this seems like a fairly passable first impression. I should get this out of the way though, the exposition dumps regarding the events of the movie were really forced and annoying. I guess they're filling out information for people who didn't see it, but they don't elaborate nearly enough of what happened in order for an outsider to understand. The info is being treated with this delicate touch like it's supposed to be important, but it's kind of just glossed over and rushed, and it has an effect on the map in a really questionable way. They say that the map expands whenever it solves a friendship problem outside of Equestria. But haven't there already been friendship problems solved outside of Equestria? We already had one in Griffinstone, and there was never any mention of the map expanding when that happened. It's just so confusing that they keep adding new aspects as to how this map is supposed to work. And the confusing origin story of the Harmony Tree during Shadowplay certainly doesn't help. However, the rest of the episode makes a much better effort to play off its premise. For starters, the story is paced excellently. All of the events flow smoothly together and it helps the story feel better connected. It knows how much time needs to be spent on each thing to keep it from getting boring or overwhelming. Celestia explaining the ways of the EEA is kept short and simple without turning it into an exposition dump. We're given just enough information to properly understand how this system works. The introduction of the 6 student characters feels right too. Just the right amount of focus is put on it to give the audience a sample of their personalities and how they interact with each other. And the apology scene is well broken up between the 5 girls to get the point across steadily. Even the first song is used to implement the passage of time and explore how the students feel about the school. Not only does it convey the theme that it's going for properly, but the detail that's presented in its passage of time is actually very well done. You get to see how the students' feelings towards the school changes over time. They start singing along when they feel like they've been accepted in this environment, and they start to feel stressed and exhausted when Twilight starts enforcing the EEA guidelines in their classes. This frustration progressively drives them away from the school because they're not getting any valuable experience. And to their credit, to some extent, school should at least be a little bit of fun. It has to include something that'll spark the students' interests and encourage them to pursue education in these fields. Learning can still include a fun element to it, and it's something that Twilight kind of undermines when going by the book. The characterization of the main group is also very spot on. And unlike the movie, there's never a moment where they act out of character or feel annoying or distracting. Each of them are portrayed fantastically in this episode. From Pinky's humor fitting into the story, to Dash's hesitation on being a teacher, to even Spike's straightforward attitude being the superego to Twilight's ridiculousness. The interactions between them and the dialogue they use intertwine naturally, making them great supporting characters. They also have some authentic methods of interacting with the other characters, be it cheering up Twilight when she's broken down, or trying to reason with the other races. And unlike some other episodes where the main 6 are just shoved in there, the circumstances surrounding this episode allow allows it to make sense for all of them to be there. They're also fit into teaching roles that suit them well, without denying the awareness of their other jobs. We do see Pinky is working at Sugar Cube Corner after the school is closed, so it can make you think about how they're able to manage both positions. It is possible that the school is open for a couple of hours during the day, which gives them enough time to go back to their other occupations. Teaching at the school is kind of like a second job. They can always call in busy if something comes up, and it's possible that other teachers can be hired in the future. As for the new student characters, I think we'll need some time to warm up to them. They don't really do anything in this episode to leave an impression, and some of them are kind of annoying. But the episode does make good use of them with the narrative it's choosing to tell, making them a diverse circle of misfits who develop a bond over time. They seem to work off of each other evenly, and there's a balance in how they're represented, and they actually do develop during the story. Despite their disapproval of the school, they still learned things about friendship. They take their experiences to heart, which was what Twilight wanted from them all along. And it plays into the tradition versus experimentation message that the ending goes for. During the scene at the lake, they show how they're able to engage with each other. They discuss things like their culture, and they show an interest in learning from each other. They learn things like cooperation and sharing and supporting each other and trusting each other. And it's done in a way that feels more natural than how Rainbow Dash learned for her Wonderbolt test. On that note, I suppose they make an okay first impression, but I'm really hoping that the season doesn't overdo or underdo anything with them. Adding this many new characters at one time is both ambitious and a risky move for the staff to go with, and they'll need to do something with each of them in order for their presence to have a long-term meaning. Even Celestia plays a pretty good supporting role in the episode, offering Twilight some guidance and assisting her in getting her school program started. She even addresses the importance of parliaments that she doesn't have full authority over. Just because she's in a position of power doesn't mean that she can just do whatever she wants. It's kind of like a charter agreement between different systems. Plus, she has a pretty good say in things during the ending when she confronts Brain Pony, bringing up how other creatures coexisting and learning from each other really isn't that different from when the three pony tribes did it during Heartswarming. This is a really good continuity nod because it contributes to the story and isn't just acknowledging that this was something that happened in a previous episode. What I like most about the episode is its tone. After all the epic adventuring from the movie and the oversaturated lore from Shadowplay, it feels refreshing to have an episode that goes back to the show's slice of life roots. The conflict is more mellow and doesn't try so hard to be this big grande confrontation. It's not a big battle against a force of evil, it's just the character setting up a school and being faced with the responsibilities that come with it. Even the climax has a lighthearted charm to it that makes it more fun to watch. It's silly and more goofy looking compared to the movie and some season finale episodes, but it also fits with the rest of the episode because of its matching tone. And it even gets some good comedy across. There's this clever visual gag that highlights AJ's distaste for any fruit that isn't an apple. And at a later point during the song, those same pictures of fruit are still on the chalkboard. That's fucking amazing! That is such a humorous attention to detail, and I love it. And it also has some really good comedic timing. The facial expressions of the students when Ocellus gets her Rarity impression is just right. And later in the episode, Pinky is like, "We need to prevent your kingdoms from going to war," and the kids are just so thrown off by that line, and they give such a confused expression. And one of them is like, "Wait, what's going on?" That is such a perfectly timed moment to bring that up to them. And there's a fairly nice jab at Ember showing how singing is one of her weaknesses. Twilight seems to be a figure of question as her by-the-book motto unintentionally puts conflict in motion. But the episode is laid down in a way where it makes sense for her to follow the rules. She was a teacher doing her job under the guidelines of an education system. She needed to appeal to this council in order to keep the school open. She didn't do anything wrong, it's just that the others weren't used to one way of education. Although I will admit, there are a couple of questions that end up coming with running this school, especially if other creatures are going to be involved. It only seems to be teaching friendship stuff, and so far there's no indication that the students are learning about the culture involved. I'm not saying that they're conforming any of the non-pony creatures. I mean, Gilda was sent to a pony school for flying, and that clearly had no effect on her personality as a griffin. But there's still a lot of things to consider here. Twilight says that there are creatures who don't understand friendship, but that's a really dumb assumption to make. How is she sure that they don't know about friendship just because they're not familiar with the equestrian way of doing it? She does say that her main idea is helping the students to accept differences and learn about communication, but the school's functionality feels too one note at this point. There doesn't seem to be any teachings about history and culture, and it only seems to focus on the friendship aspect. There should be classes teaching the students about pony culture and yak culture and griffin culture and so on. Like, why doesn't Twilight take the time to ask the other races about their own education systems? I mean, on some level it would make sense that Twilight didn't do that. The Changelings are just starting out after they overthrew Chrysalis, and it's largely implied that the dragons are more uncivilized and they didn't really rely on education as much as they just relied on their pride. But the Griffins and Hippogriffs are shown to have some kind of civilized way of living, and Yona clearly states that Yaks have schools. So I still end up questioning why Twilight didn't just ask them about what kind of schools that they have. They should at least have some non-pony counselors in the school so they can at least make sure that the school is allowing them to properly maintain their culture. But despite that, I do like the episode's lesson. It's a tradition versus experimentation kind of thing where Twilight ends up challenging the views of the EEA, and she's motivated by Starlight Glimmer in one of her more appealing moments. She talks to her about even though she had a responsibility to the school, she also has a responsibility to being the friendship princess, and how she can be both while running the school. In the end, she decides to make her friendship school a completely different school, with a completely different curriculum. She basically makes it into an independent learning center, something that she, as the Princess of Friendship, can look over in her own way. And the ending song adds to how it'll expand on the idea of friendship as a concept. It'll be a school where creatures can learn about acceptance and tolerance of others. If it's done right, it can be a school that focuses on these themes without resulting in culture death. There's even a moment where Rarity teaches Yona how to braid her hair better, which is something that she can share with the other Yaks. However, I can't say that the episode is great since there are several issues to be found. Aside from the references to the movie and the whole ramble I went on about the school system, there's a number of other things that just feel really off. First and most obvious is the sudden redesign of Canterlot and the throne room, which is obviously being done to tie the show into the movie. I get that the movie couldn't be done overnight and it came out 3 seasons too late to make sense in context, but these new designs still come out of nowhere, and it's definitely gonna confuse people who didn't see the movie. Plus, they only seem to bring up how they saved Equestria from the Storm King, which comes across as another forced reference to the movie. But why would they only reference the Storm King if Twilight and the gang saved the world several times before then? Is it because it's the most recent time they saved the world? Because they don't give enough context to that. And at some point during the song, AJ says how she wasn't allowed to teach honesty. So wait, was Twilight not allowing honesty to be taught? Was it because it's not in the EEA book? But then Brain Pony says that honesty is imperative. So why would you say that honesty isn't in the guideline if it is in the guideline? And that school under attack scene was way too over the top. Ocellus could have easily went back to normal before going anywhere near the school, so why didn't she just do that? There really was no need for that whole bumping into stuff and scaring everyone. And if Ocellus was the one causing the damage and scaring everyone, why would the other students be blamed for it? It's not like they were the giant bug attacking the school, and there's several other pieces of dialogue that don't make sense. For instance, if you knew that they wanted to stay together of their own will, then why would you assume that someone was hiding them? And why would you resort to accusing the other nations of doing it? How did you spend most of your life as a sea pony? The events of the movie only happened over a few weeks. If you said you didn't sleep through Fluttershy's class, then why were you shown getting bored along with the others? Was there really just a day that you decided to be more interested than the others? And if you did learn something about the Pugwudgies, why didn't you learn about what to do to not antagonize them? And why didn't Ocellus just transform in a giant creature to intimidate them? We saw her doing it earlier, she could have easily done it again. And how the heck did they build the school so fast? Was it something else they just grew out of the ground, or did they build it from scratch? It's something that just ends up happening and there's no context to how it was done. And lastly, there's the issues with Brain Pony. Yeah, I know he has a name, but let's face it, we're all gonna refer to him as Brain Pony because of the voice actor. In his first scene, he talks about schools teaching ponies about defending themselves and their way of life. That really doesn't sound like a regular school to me. Maybe we're just taking things out of context and it's not necessarily a military thing, but he ends up causing a lot of unfortunate implications to be brought up. The way he talks about other creatures using knowledge against them and how it could destroy Equestria, not to mention how he talks about how the school was supposed to teach about defending them from dangerous creatures and how it should be exclusive to ponies, sends a lot of warning signs. And he does this directly in front of the other kingdom leaders. They try to make him have a point by telling Twilight how her school was disorganized, and to his credit he wasn't wrong, but he was provoking the other kingdoms and he was clearly being racist. Shouldn't this have been the point where Twilight said, you know what, fuck this, I'm going to make this school an independent education center and I'm not going to abide to your racist ways? If he was just being concerned and protective of the EEA standards, I might have sided with him in some way. But after that clear showcase of racism, there is no way I can sympathize with that. So, on a final note, I'd say that School Daze is a fairly passable middle-of-the-road episode and a nice intro to Season 8. So far, the way the school is being implemented isn't being done in a bad way, and many of the characters were portrayed greatly. The story progressed soundly, the lesson had a nice spin to it, and it got some good humor across. But this episode is still merely a first impression, and the rest of the season needs to make good use of the elements that are introduced in it. The school has to be fleshed out more, as well as the student characters. And with Brain Pony implied to be a returning character, I'm really hoping they do something reasonable with him. And don't just make him into a racist straw man. We'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the review. I look forward to doing another season of Friendship is Magic, and I look forward to you joining in the ride. So until next time, stay awesome. This is Map signing out.